Hi, we're talking about ratio and proportions. Um, Very simply put, ratio means comparing quantities of two different things. At the bare minimum, it's just comparing quantities, right? To give you some examples, um, the ratio of apples to oranges, wins to losses, heads to tails, boys to girls in the class, men to women in an office, right? So let's take a specific case study. Chennai Super King wins 14 matches and loses 7 in the IPL. What is the ratio of the wins to the losses? Very simple, but let's take it and go step by step. There are two ways of expressing a ratio. One is called the odds form, which is 14 colon 7. The other one is a fractional form. The same odds form can be converted into a fractional form by just writing it as 14 by 7, right? But neither of them are in its simplest form. So how do we find and bring a ratio to its simplest form? A ratio is said to be in its simplest form when there are no common factors between the two elements, or between the numerator and denominator when the ratio is expressed in a fractional form. For instance, in our last example, the ratio of wins to losses is 14 is to 7. However, there's a common factor between 14 and 7, which is 7, right? So if you divide both the numbers by that factor, what you get is 2 is to 1, right? So the simplest form in this case is 2 is to 1 or 2 by 1 when put in the fractional form. Okay. Now changing ratio problems are the most common problems that you would find related to ratio. And it has a heavy dose of algebra. So you need to think and proceed methodically, and it's very important because the chances, the opportunities to make mistakes is going to be many, right? So this is an example of one such approach, which is very systematic and very methodical, right? So changing ratios, as I said, they're very common. And let me give you an example. Let's say the ratio of the Wii games to the Xbox games that I own is 1 is to 1. However, if I were to exchange 3 Xbox games for 3 Wii games, the ratio of the games now turns to 2 is to 1. So how many games do I own? While this can be very intuitive and you can find the answer by just thinking in some random way, I have given you a specifically simple problem because it's easier for you to understand the approach taken, right? So the first step in solving any problem, not just ratio, is to state the facts, right? And make your assumption. So let the number of Wii games that I own be W. Let the number of Xbox games that I own be X, correct? So the first part of the problem states that the ratio of the games that I own is 1 is to 1. So W by X equal to 1 by 1. So the problem statement says that the ratio is 1 is to 1. But I have to convert that into an equation. And in order to do that, I have to basically convert the ratio into a fractional form. So W is to X being 1 is to 1 becomes W by X equal to 1 by 1. Now, if I exchange 3 Xbox games, what I do is basically lose those games. So the new number of Xbox games that I own is X minus 3. And I exchange these Xbox games in return for Wii games. So, which means the new number of Wii games that I own is W plus 3. So now the problem states that the new ratio of the Wii to Xbox games is 2 is to 1. So converting that into fractional form, it's W plus 3 in whole brackets divided by X plus 3 in whole brackets, which would be equal to the fractional form of the ratio, which is 2 by 1. So now what I have is two equations and two variables. The two variables being W and X, and two equations that I found, one from the current ratio and one from the new ratio. Now let's go and find out those equations, right? So the first equation is W by X equal to 1 by 1. The second equation is W by 3 divided by X minus 3 equal to 2 by 1. However, both of these equations are not in their regular form. So what exactly is the regular form? Right? It's very simple. An equation is said to be in a regular form when the equation has no denominators. All the variable terms are on the left hand side. All the constant terms are on the right hand side, and all the constant terms are positive. So let's transform the first equation. Now I have w by x equal to 1 by 1. It's not regular because both left hand side and right hand side has a denominator. Whenever you want to remove denominators, you have to do cross multiply. So you have to cross multiply both sides to get rid of the denominator. So what you end up getting on the left hand side is w into 1 and on the right hand side is x into 1. So it becomes w equal to x. However, this is still not in the regular form because you want to move all the variables to the left hand side. Now equation is transformed into w minus x equal to 0. Now maintain the order, w being the first term, x being the second term, and the constant on the right hand side. Okay, now let's go to the second equation. Here it's w plus 3 divided by x minus 3 equal to 2 by 1. Again, it's not in the regular form because it has denominators. In order to remove denominators, you need to cross multiply. When you cross multiply, the equation transforms into w plus 3 equal to 2x minus 6. Now move all the variables to the left and all the constants to the right. So it changes to w minus 2x equal to minus 6 minus 3, which is minus 9. However, it's still not in the regular form because the constant is negative. So to change that, you basically multiply both left hand side and right hand side with minus 1 and still maintain the order where the w comes first and x comes second. So the equation transforms to minus w plus 2x equal to 9. Now you have your two equations. So what you got to do here is eliminate one of the variables. Since the coefficient of w in one equation is 1 and the second one is minus 1, you don't need to multiply either of the equations with a factor. Just adding the two equations would eliminate w. And when you eliminate it, what you get is x being 9. Right? Since w minus x equal to 0, it implies w equal to x equal to 9. As I had said, this is a very simple problem, but it explains how to follow the procedure. And that is very, very key here. Right? Now let's go back to the question. Just finding that number doesn't finish the job, right? If you read the entire question, what's finally asked for is how many games do I own now, right? What the question is actually asking is what's x plus w, not what the new x is, not what the new w is. The total number of games that I own is basically 9 plus 9, which is 18. So this is the way to solve all problems related to changing rate.